I asked a friend of mine to come in and talk to us a little bit. His name is Nick Friedman, one of the brightest branding people I know. He literally is in the junk removal and moving business, okay? But his approach to guerrilla marketing, guerrilla advertising, just squeezing pennies and making a ton of money out of them. He's expanded to over 100 franchises in just a short period of time and was recently listed as one of the top 30 entrepreneurs in the United States by Inc. magazine. I'm really honored, really privileged to introduce to you Mr. Nick Friedman of College Hunks Hauling Junk.
Awesome. Thanks. Perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Friedman. As Terry mentioned, co-founder, president of College Hunks Hauling Junk and Moving. And I was brought up, to follow the more traditional career path coming through high school and college, which is you work hard in school, you get good grades, you get a degree, you get a job, and you kind of climb the corporate ladder. And the summer before my senior year of college, I had that mindset where when I graduate, I need to get a job. And this was right around the time the movie Office Space came out. You guys seen that movie Office Space? So there were movie posters all around our college campus that said, "Work sucks." And so here I am, a 21-year-old student, head down, need a job, need a job, need a job. And I'm seeing work sucks, work sucks, work sucks. And I'm thinking to myself, how do I bridge that gap? How do I, resolve that situation? And I didn't have the answer. And so the summer before my senior year of college, I went back to Washington, D.C. I had an internship at the International Monetary Fund in Washington, D.C. It looked great on my resume, but there was sort of a hollow feeling in the pit of my stomach as I was looking out to the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life. And I felt like this guy in the middle of the cubicle here, as I was looking out into the next 30, 40 years of my life, that there had to be something else. It was unfulfilling for me. This wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And some of my colleagues that I was working around that summer enjoyed what they were doing, which was great for them, but it wasn't for me. And fortunately enough, that summer, my buddy from high school, who I had met in 10th grade, approached me with this beat-up cargo van, and he said, "Hey, I've got an idea." He said, "I think we can take this beat-up cargo van and haul people's junk and move people's furniture. We can make some extra money, be a good way to make some extra money this summer before we go back for our senior year." And it sounded great to me because my internship was unpaid, so I figured, this would be a way for us to earn a couple extra bucks. And we were sitting around the living room table, and it was his mom that said, "Hey, I've got it. You guys are like the college hunks who haul junk." And we kind of laughed at each other at first, and then we said, that's got a catchy ring to it. That's not what people typically associate with movers or junk haulers. So we said, you know what, let's give it a try. So we started putting computer printout flyers in mailboxes around town. People started calling our phones. They had a need for the service, and they had a reaction to the name. It was a conversation starter. So that was kind of the very first light bulb moment for me, where there's another path that I wasn't really taught about in school. If we get out there and promote ourselves, we can actually make some money. So we went back to school our senior year of college, and Omar called me up and said, "Hey, I'm writing a business plan for College Hunks. I'm going to put it into an entrepreneurship competition. And I think I can get at least top 10 finishing. The top 10 finishing gets $500. And so I said, "Yep, sounds great. Let's do that." And sure enough, out of about 150 entries, the business plan won first prize and gave us a lot more confidence in the concept. It was a $10,000 grand prize check and a lot more credibility to the concept. And that was sort of light bulb moment number 2 for me, where I realized when you get recognition and publicity for something, the perceived value and credibility of whatever it is that you're doing is elevated. This article came out in the Business Miami magazine. We started getting contacted by all these different people and accolades. And we actually didn't think that we were going to start the business out of college for real. We were thinking this would just look great on our resume to help us go get jobs after we graduate. And we did. We ended up going and getting corporate jobs for a couple months before I decided, you know what, I'm going to email Omar because I still have this feeling of unfulfillment. And I said, what's our timeline for starting College Hunks on a full scale? And he emailed me back, all capital letters, "My timeline's right now, ! Let's do this." And so we quit our jobs and we literally started becoming full-time junk haulers and movers. And you can imagine the looks on our parents' faces, our friends and colleagues, when we told them we were going to quit our jobs after college to start a business hauling junk and moving furniture. They were like, you're going to quit your jobs to do what? Haul junk? And the company's going to be called what? College Hunks? Are you going to throw away your college degree to start a trash business? Is that really what you're going to be doing? And we use that as motivation, as kind of fuel for our fire and fuel for our energy. But when we first started, we were doing all the work ourselves. So we were driving the trucks, we were answering the phones, we were hauling the junk, and we had the 800 number on the back of our trucks routed to our cell phones. So people would call to complain about erratic driving, and I'd be the one in the driver's seat answering the phone, apologizing on the other end, saying, listen, we don't condone that type of driving in our company. We'll tell those guys to be safer on the road. We appreciate you reporting that to us. That's not how we operate this business. Thank you for letting us know. So we probably fired ourselves 3 or 4 times that first summer. But we always in our mind had the ambition of becoming a bigger brand. We had the ambition of becoming a national brand. And with that in mind, we always kind of operated and conducted ourselves as if we were that, as if we were a bigger national brand. I can remember we would park our truck. We had one truck. We would park it all around Washington, D.C. in different high-traffic areas, and people would come up to us and say, man, what do you got, 20 trucks? I see you guys everywhere. And we had just one truck. We had these email aliases. You guys heard the saying, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So we wanted to be a big national brand. So we had, PR at collegehunksHaulingJunk.com, marketing at collegehunksHaulingJunk.com, and we would answer all those emails ourselves, but we would put like a different person's name in the signature line. It was like, Jason Lewis and Martha, Stewart, or whatever the case may be, just to try to give the perception that we were bigger than we were, because we wanted to kind of set the bar out there to then have to go out and chase it and become that business that we anticipated and knew that we would be able to become. But when we first started, sure enough, we started to burn out a little bit, because there was only so much stuff that 2 individuals could move in a single day. We were tired at the end of the day of moving all that furniture. Then we had to call back the calls that we missed. We had to write everything down in a notepad. We didn't have any sort of software platform at the time. And one of our mentors recommended to us a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. I don't know if anybody in the room has read that book. Kind of a very simple, straightforward fable book, but really the key message there is if you're going to grow a business, you've got to learn how to work on the business, not just in the business. You've got to learn how to work and create systems and processes for your business to scale. So we started documenting everything that we did. How did we wear the uniform? How did we drive the truck? How did we load the truck? How did we answer the phone? Everything that we kind of were doing as sort of second nature, we started documenting and making into checklists so that we could eventually have another truck, let alone one day another location. And that set us down the path to explore franchising, which ultimately was our path for expansion of our business. Now, Terry mentioned we've done some pretty creative things from a publicity standpoint over the years. One of our big breaks was on the very first episode of the very first season of Shark Tank. We saw an ad in Inc. magazine, and it said, looking for entrepreneurs to pitch business ideas for a TV show. That's all it said. So the show didn't exist back then. This was like the pilot that they were filming for. We didn't know who any of the sharks were or how the process worked, but all we saw was national television show. We're trying to become a national brand. What do we got to do to get on the show? And so we were sitting around and we were thinking, what is something that we could pitch for this TV show that would be likely for the producers to select us to put us on the show? And we had always joked about this sister company that we thought we could start to be a sister concept for College Hunks. We were going to call it College Foxes Packing Boxes. And so sure enough, So sure enough, we pitched it. We sent in our pitch tape. They selected us for the show. The Sharks weren't fools, of course. We know that by now. But they offered us an investment, but they wanted equity in the College Hunks business, which was operational at the time, had, I think, 3 or 4 franchises that we had sold. So we ended up turning down the deal, but it was a huge kind of putting us on the map for us. We got a ton of franchise inquiries. The show still, 10 years later, our episode reruns on CNBC, and every time it does, we get a little, spike in web traffic or franchise inquiries. So that really kind of illustrated to me the power of publicity, the power kind of mainstream media coverage, and you know, we really continue to pursue and chase those types of recognitions over the years as well, and it had varying different impacts. And just like at the very beginning, where we were kind of giving the impression that we were a bigger company, I think our brand was bigger than our business for probably the first half dozen years that we were in business. And you know, ultimately today we've been able to catch the business up to the brand, but again, we were just kind of setting the bar out there for what we wanted to be, that big national brand, because that was our vision. This was another story that came out in Newsweek called College Kid to Millionaire, and it had some examples of men and women who had started businesses in college that had gone on to have varying levels of success, and it had sort of the scroll bar at the bottom where you could kind of look at the different examples that they gave. Well, the other examples that they gave was Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, Michael Dell, the founder of Dell Computers, the two guys who started Google. I think Fred Smith from FedEx was probably the closest thing, but then there was Nick and Omar from College Hunks hauling junk. So it reminded me, I have a 4-year-old, she watches Sesame Street. There's a segment, one of these things is not like the other one. I thought that was maybe what this was about, but what it did do, I think, is again create another layer of validation and credibility for us that we were doing things a little bit differently and unique. And you know, we didn't go out and invent the next Facebook or Snapchat or Google or what have you, but we took a very simple concept, trucks and labor, and we put a very creative wrapper around the exterior as far as the brand was concerned. And then we made a very intentional focus on the team member experience and the client experience, and that's really was the key to our success back then and has continued to be the key to our success moving forward. So a lot of branding and publicity and exposure is really about where you focus your efforts and energy. And so we kind of got that sizzle story told in many different ways about college guys who started a business and gone on to be successful. But then we started making a focus on, we want to be one of the best places to work in Tampa. How do we do that? And so we found the criteria from, you know, the Tampa Bay Business Journal and the different magazines out there. And we said, you know, what are the criteria by which these companies are voted on or awarded best places to work? We found out what the criteria were, and then we made it a company goal, not just Nick and Omar's goal, and we made it a company goal to get that recognition. So we created a best places to work committee within our organization of team members where we all were striving to get that recognition and reward. It was an award. It was not something that it was just the founders were trying to, you know, champion this vibrant culture. It was all of us were going to sort of check off the criteria so we could have that recognition and be proud and declare ourselves a best places to work organization. So all of those things that I've just shared with you really boil down to kind of the vision of what it is that you're trying to do with your organization, where it is that you're trying to go with either your own personal role in your company or with your overall brand as a whole. And so, you know, again, from the very beginning, our vision was to become a national brand, to become recognized for our creative marketing and for our company culture, and all of those things that we set out as far as our vision were what were driving our internal behavior and efforts to help achieve those means, to help manifest that reality. You know, I'm not going to get into too big of a talk about core values, but they are a very critical component of how we function as an organization. Who here has core values in your organization? So that's good to share. And I know you're going to hear a talk from Jonathan Bowman, one of my friends from EOS, later today, where he's going to talk about, you know, core values being shared by all, not just with all. And that's something that we make a very intentional focus on as well. The thing about core values is they define your company culture. Your company culture defines the behavior. So culture drives behavior, behavior drives results. And once we made that realization in our organization, all of a sudden we were able to attract really great people that were living our values and culture, and they were producing incredible results, and some of that actually ended up in, believe it or not, publicity and media exposure. This was a story here in Tampa where one of our movers was doing a job at an assisted living facility, and the elevator got stuck. And there was a resident in the assisted living facility that was having trouble standing because she couldn't stand for an extended period of time. She was having a little bit of a panic attack. So our mover ended up getting on his hands and knees and letting her sit on his back while the elevator was being worked on. And of course, the photo got captured. We ended up sharing it on social media, and it went viral. I mean, we got calls from the Ellen Show, from CNN, Fox, every national mainstream media outlet wanted to share this story. It ended up being one of those photos where you see like the blog post. It's like 10 photos that'll restore your faith in humanity. And this was one of the photos that got shared on one of those blog posts. But there's not something like this that you could put in your operations or procedural manual, right? What do you do if you're stuck in an elevator with an elderly woman and she's having trouble standing for an extended period of time? Make sure you get on your hands and knees and allow her to sit there for a while. So this brings it back to why I share the importance of those values and culture, because if you have those set as a foundation and you keep them very top of mind, where they're celebrated, that you're utilized as a litmus test for who you bring into your organization, then again, amazing things start to manifest, because the culture drives the behavior drives the results, and the results can be pretty magical in some cases, like this happened to be in this situation. So when you think about it, in our business, one of our visions is also to become recognized as an iconic brand. Always branding is another one of our core values. And so for us, what that means is, how do we become recognized for something beyond just the industry that we're in? We're moving people's stuff, we're hauling people's junk, big whoop, a lot of people can do that. But what is it that we can really represent and stand for that will have people go out of their way to want to be involved with us as an employee, or go out of their way to want to share our story with others, or to utilize our services? And you think about, people that'll line up to pay $4 or $5 for Starbucks coffee. They could go get it for 75 cents at a gas station or 7-Eleven. People who wear Harley Davidson t-shirts that don't even drive the motorcycle, which is the product Harley Davidson sells, because in that brand's example, they recognize what that brand stands for: the freedom, the renegade, the open road. And so I used to share this slide, by the way, just as a quick side note, with all of our new franchise owners, all of our new hires as part of orientation. And about a year ago, so I was sharing the slide for like 5, 6, 7 years. About a year ago, I got an email from 2 of our team member Hunks from around the country who I had never met before, with photos of themselves with a College Hunks tattoo on their arm. And I don't think they had ever seen this slide prior to that either. And, I don't know if they thought it was maybe job security or something like that, but we certainly never condoned it or endorsed it or suggested it to any of our employees. So what I think that did is it was, again, a manifestation of the fact that our brand stood for something beyond just moving people's stuff or hauling people's furniture. It was standing for something, in our case, again, a leadership development organization for our frontline employees to feel empowered, to have fun, to compete, to be out there and put themselves out there, and then it ended up manifesting itself in that way where those 2 young men did that. And I thought that was pretty neat to see that sort of come to fruition when we sort of set this slide as something that we aspired to become, and then all of a sudden it came into a reality for us as well. Something to keep in mind for everybody in the room, business owners, team members, whatever the case, vendors, whatever the case may be, always keep in mind for yourself that you are the brand. And the team members on your organization should have this mindset as well. Because then it's not just about waiting for the newspaper to write a story about you. It's not just waiting for a big TV show opportunity like Shark Tank, but it's the little incremental interactions with your brand that people have on a daily basis out in the community that's equally as impactful, maybe not as recognizable or as memorable, but equally as impactful. And that's that lofty responsibility that everybody in the room carries with you when you go out to represent you and your organization. So some of the things that we do at College Hunks to make sure that always branding is top of mind, just kind of simple basics. This is kind of like branding 101 for us. The uniform and smile is part of the uniform. Our guys are going into people's homes to move their personal belongings and haul their junk away or move their furniture. You're letting a complete stranger into your home to do that. The example I always give is with UPS. What would they be if they weren't driving the brown trucks and had the brown uniforms? If they were just, pulling up to your driveway in a beat-up truck and street clothes and putting a package on your porch, you might question whether or not you should open that package, right? But we're going into people's homes, so the trust and care of the image is so critical for our brand. I think it's so important for every brand. our name, it's College Hunks hauling junk. People might have some preconceived notions of who's showing up at their door, or what school they're in, or how hunky they're going to be. So we made it part of our brand. We made it part of our brand process to make part of our client introduction is what is the college affiliation, what was it, what's it going to be, what is our team members' college affiliation with the organization. And the Hunks now is that's part of our brand promise. It's an acronym, you guys may not know this, but Hunks stands for honest, uniformed, nice, knowledgeable service. So that by that definition, I can still even qualify. So parking is something else we do. That's something we call parking the vehicles out in visible locations when they're not being utilized. That harkens back to the very first truck we have. I mean, now we've got probably over 2,000 trucks roaming the country. We had one truck and we were parking it in all these visible locations for branding purposes, and that kind of gets to the guerrilla marketing aspect of some of the things we were doing, putting those bandit signs out that sometimes we get fined for, but we still do it anyway. We chalk that expense up as a marketing expense if it happens, because it's getting the name out there. And our very first news article that was ever written up about us came from one of those bandit signs. When we first started after college and we put the little College Hunks hauling junk signs in one of those medians or off-ramps, a Washington Post reporter saw it. She was like, that's a quirky name. That's interesting. I'm going to call that phone number and find out a little bit more about this business, because she wrote about new businesses in the community. And we told her our story. We invited her to come ride on one of our trucks with us and go out to one of the junk hauling sites. And sure enough, that article came out in Washington Post. And this was a little bit before all the different social media channels were out there and the different messaging that people get bombarded with on a daily basis. But we got a huge bump in business that month when that article came out. And then making sure that our team members, again, kind of have that mindset of you're on the stage, you are the brand, you are the walking, talking billboard at all times. Imagine Oprah or 60 Minutes is watching the truck drive by and going to be filming you when you're getting in and out of it. That's the mindset that we have to have when we are representing the brand of College Hunks. We track and measure our Net Promoter Score. So I don't know, who here uses Net Promoter Score in your business? Anybody? So we survey every single one of our clients on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to utilize our service again and or recommend us to your friends and neighbors? A 9 or a 10 is considered a promoter. A 7 or 8 is considered a passive, right? They're not likely to go sing our praises to anybody. And then a 1 through 6 is considered a detractor. So we track that Net Promoter Score, and then we compare it with and benchmark it with some of the big iconic brands that are out there that are pretty memorable. And one of the things we pride ourselves on is the fact that we've, in an industry where, a lot can go wrong with moving people's furniture, damages, late pickups, missed pickups, whatever the case may be, we've been able to maintain a pretty world-class Net Promoter Score. So, you heard the old slogan in business, what gets measured gets managed. So measuring your Net Promoter Score, measuring your client experience, surveying your clients, gives you another data point that you can continue to improve on and upgrade. And I talked about the 7-Eleven and Starbucks comparison. So as you think about your own brand positioning, and you think about how you're going to promote it or represent it to the community, to your clients, or to the general public, are you the 7-Eleven where it's kind of more about convenience and low price? Are you the Starbucks where it's more about experience and consistency, right? And that's kind of the mindset that we took when it came to moving and hauling. And one of the things we always talk about in our business is we've got to create sizzle, which is kind of the brand, the name, the publicity, the news stories, but we've got to have some stake behind that sizzle. We've got to have something that is going to be memorable for people to actually want to recommend us or refer us to their friends and neighbors. And when we first started the business, we really didn't have the stake. I'll be honest with you. The name was College Hunks Hauling Junk. It was bright orange and green colors. We thought that was going to be enough to keep the phone ringing, and it was initially, but once people recognized that maybe the service was no different than what they could get from just going on Craigslist or just calling, their somebody with a pickup truck to come move their stuff. We didn't get the repeat referral business. We didn't get the Net Promoter Score that we were looking for. So we had to focus on the client experience and be very intentional about it as well. One of the things that happened, I go to a lot of these conferences like this, learning, trying to improve myself, sharpen my saw. But one of the things that one of the speakers did once to me that I think really resonated with me is I was in a big audience of entrepreneurs, and the speaker had this slide of Jay-Z up on on the screen, and he was talking about how, you know, Jay-Z's not just a rapper, but he's become this very entrepreneurial icon. And then he got the crowd really excited. He goes, "Good news, everybody. I put in a call to Jay-Z's people, and if we could all just put turn our heads to the back of the room, I want us to all welcome Jay-Z." And of course, everybody, huge breaking necks, looking to the back of the room, and nobody walked in the door. So we were all sorely disappointed. And the point the speaker made to me, or to us as the audience, was we've all heard the saying, "It's not what you know, it's who you know," right? And the speaker said, and I can share the same thing, is I know Jay-Z. I know him. But the problem is Jay-Z doesn't know me. And so in business and in life in general, it's really not who you know, but it's who knows you that is going to really make a difference and make an impact for you in terms of opening up doors, opening up opportunities, opening up networks, whatever the case may be. And so I've kind of kept that in the back of my mind, as well as, how do we make ourselves known? And we do that through all the different ways I've talked about so far, mainstream publicity, social media, guerrilla marketing. Those are all ways to try to get your word out there, get your name out there, either as an individual, credible source, or as a brand, as a business, to make yourself known. Because the more people who know you, know what you do, know your story, know how you do it, that becomes more awareness for you to then be able to ask for the order, ask for the appointment, ask for the meeting, ask for the opportunity, ask for the joint venture, whatever the case may be. So there's really 3 steps, quite frankly, as it relates to getting publicity if we're talking about PR from a publicity standpoint, whether it's a news article, whether it's a podcast interview, whether it's going on a TV show. And the 3 steps are quite simple. It's have an angle that would be worth writing up in a report or in a news story. Know who would be interested in telling that story, what reporter, what journalist, what publication, and pick up the phone and tell them about that story. Because every journalist and reporter and editorial desk in the world every morning is asking themselves the same question, which is what? What am I going to write today? That's the question they're asking themselves every single day. Now, they get bombarded with press releases and many other things, so they don't have a shortage of options to choose from, but they are wondering what they're going to write about each and every day. So you're helping them just like you're helping your clients if you're reaching out and providing an interesting angle, an interesting story topic, something relevant, maybe timely as it relates to something in your industry or something that's going on in pop culture or something that's going on in your community, whatever the case may be. And you don't need to have 100 angles. Come up with 3 or 4 that you think would be relevant, whether it's maybe 1 or 2 human interest angles about your own story, about your business, 1 or 2 industry specific, since I know we've got a lot of tech folks in here that would be relevant and important. And who would tell that story? What reporter, what journalist, what publication? When in the early days when we were really chasing after a lot of media exposure and publicity, and as I would sit there and read through the in-flight magazines, every time I'd read an article about another business, I would be like, that's an interesting story about a business. I'd rip the page out and circle the reporter's name and try to find out how to get in contact with them. And I'd pick the phone, send them an email, and say, "Hey, I read your story about ABC Company in the American Way magazine on my flight to Phoenix. Here's another story that I think might be of interest to you. Here's a couple bullet points." And just like sales, they're not going to necessarily bite on the very first outreach that you make to them, right? How many times do you guys have to fill your sales funnel with your prospective clients to finally get somebody to give you the order, to give you the account? Same thing holds true when it comes to publicity. And I don't know if we have PR firms in the room, but we've had a lot more success driving these efforts ourselves internally, or with interns who we pay commission to if they have success, rather than going with a PR firm where we're paying few $1,000s a month retainer to, and they're just kind of blasting us out along with all their other clients. So sorry to the PR firms, it might be in the room, but we've had more success kind of driving those efforts ourselves. And I always like to quote Oprah, because one of her famous quotes is, "Luck is when opportunity meets preparation." So when it comes to getting publicity, you've got to be prepared, you've got to be willing to drop everything. And that actually happened to us with Oprah one time or twice actually, but the first time it happened, I was having a meeting with a colleague this was in the early days, after one of those business networking breakfasts, and I was telling him what we did, and he was like, it's kind of interesting. He said, believe it or not, Oprah, the Oprah show, and this was kind of at the height of her main TV show, he said the Oprah show is doing a story on my grandmother who has compulsive hoarding tendencies. And the problem is the dumpsters that they've been using have been getting filled up so fast, so there could be an opportunity for maybe College Hunks to come in and help out with this episode. And I said, absolutely, that sounds great. When do we show up? Where do we show up? And he said, well, you have a location in New York, right? Because his grandmother lived in New York. And I said, yes, absolutely. We did not have a location in New York. Our closest location was in Washington, D.C. And so he said, well, great, well, can you let me talk to the producers. The producers were interested. They said, can you be here Friday? I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday when they asked us that. I said, yes, absolutely, we can be there. So we got in our trucks in D.C. We drove the 5-6 hours up 95 to New York. We probably amassed $1,000 worth of parking tickets because we couldn't figure out where to put this truck in Manhattan. But sure enough, we appeared on the Oprah show. We appeared on as a thanks on her website. And that's the kind of stuff that you can't really pay for, right? You can't pay for that type of exposure, that type of publicity, that type of credibility. We were able to, leverage that exposure in many different facets from a brand building and credibility standpoint with our prospective clients, with our prospective franchise owners. And you sometimes have to be willing to just kind of put yourself out there, no matter what it takes. In business, those of you who are entrepreneurs in the room took the leap to start your own business, so don't hold back on, kind of putting yourself out there and plugging and promoting your business as well. Another great example of that was shortly after our Shark Tank episode, we got called by the producers of a show called Millionaire Matchmaker. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this show, and it's on Bravo, or it was on Bravo at the time, and they would say, we've seen you on Shark Tank. We want to know if you and your business partner would be willing to come on this show. It's a dating show. And I'm thinking to myself, what's the business opportunity? Sounds fun, but what's the business connection here? And so we came up with the idea that Omar, because I wasn't going to do it, Omar was going to pick his date up in one of our College Hunks trucks and take her to haul junk for their date. We knew it was going to be a terrible date, but it was a great promotion for the business. The brand, that big orange and green truck, was plastered all over Bravo. And this was at the time, when they were rerunning the episode, their episodes 5 times a day, because they didn't have all the other shows on their channel. And we probably sold 2 or 3 franchises from it. We probably, to this day, people still come up to us and say, hey, I saw you guys on that dating show years ago. Usually it's a guy that tells us that. He's like, I was watching it with my wife, or my wife had it on. I'm like, yeah, you sure you weren't watching it? You don't have to, blame it on your wife. Promotions is not this old, antiquated concept of the snake oil salesman, standing on the corner just pumping something that nobody needs. You've got a product, you've got a service that is helpful to people. And one of the other slogans that I heard once at a conference just like this is, if you're selling, you're doing something to someone, but if you're helping, you're doing something for someone. And so if you take the mindset that you're helping with whatever it is, solutions that you offer, or you're helping the media with any stories that you're reaching out to them to share, you shouldn't feel hesitant to do it. You shouldn't feel like you're bothering somebody or upsetting or bugging somebody when you take that approach. Now, again, people might say no. Journalists sometimes get a little full of themselves because they get bombarded with ideas, and don't take that personally when they say no, because it's no different than the effort that we have to have in sales. A couple things that I want to kind of wrap up with, in just in terms of mindset. In particular, we could probably identify this in this room because we're in the tech arena, and the last speaker was talking about exits and capitalization. I think we get enamored in today's day and age with these unicorns, these tech unicorns. The Uber, the Airbnbs, the Dropbox, these billion-dollar valuation unicorns. And while those are all well and good, and we can all strive to try to, achieve those types of levels of success, most overnight success like that does not happen overnight. And so we have to have a mindset of patience and persistence and have the long-term mentality if we're going to be successful as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as business professionals. So these are some slides that really resonated with me. It took Starbucks 25 years for them to hit their tipping point. It took Apple about 25 years for them to hit their 10x tipping point. And College Hunks was no different. It took us about 10 years to get to around 25 million in sales. We're now over close to 150 million in annual sales within the following 3 to 5 years after that. So have patience, have persistence, have resilience, and you'll be able to achieve great long-term success if you just kind of stay the course. There's I think, tendency as an entrepreneur, I know I'm guilty of this myself, of wanting to kind of chase the next shiny idea, want to shortcut success. I don't know if you guys have had this experience before. The past 2 or 3 nights, I woke up in the middle of the night at like 3 or 4 in the morning. My mind started, thinking about all these different things and all these different ideas. I couldn't fall back asleep. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a little bit of kind of ingrained ADD, which I say stands for all damn day, because we can't turn it off. We can't stop the thinking. But the key about it is to take action and to put those ideas into implementation and to really start working hard to make things happen. And, the most important thing, though, is when some of you may have traveled from distances to be here. When you come to a conference like this, you're going to learn a lot of information. Sometimes I leave from these conferences, it feels like I was drinking from a fire hose. I overwhelm my team when I get home because I dump like 3 pages of notes on them and say, we got to do all these things, and we got to do them yesterday. And that's good that you're taking that initiative, but whatever you do, don't just not do anything. You follow me? Otherwise, then you just kind of had a nice vacation at the beach where you spend all your time inside, so you didn't really get to enjoy the beach, but you didn't actually get to grow yourself or grow your business. And so one of the slogans we have at College Hunks is that the magic starts when you step out of your comfort zone. And so be willing to put yourself out there. Some of the things that I shared with you about our TV experiences might have been a little bit wacky or out there, and maybe some of you may not have felt as comfortable, being out in front of a camera or being out, picking up your date in a junk truck or whatever the case may be. But that's where the magic happens in business and in life, is kind of stepping out of your comfort zone. So what are your takeaways from this conference? Well, maybe 1 or 2 ideas or nuggets that you had from my talk. 1 or 2 are nuggets that you had from each of the speakers or roundtables. And your homework assignment really is to take action on those items when you get back home, so that you haven't wasted your time, and so that you had made the most of your investment being here. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
I think we might have time for
we can do a little bit of Q&A.
some questions.
Thank you so much for that, Nick.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. Lots of good content in there. So those 3 pages that he was talking about, I think I saw some pages getting filled up out here. So use those strategically when you go back to your teams to not overwhelm. But questions that you might have for Nick? Anything on building a business, guerrilla marketing?
Who has the first question? Yes, sir.
Tom, go right ahead. So in the early days, we were taking anything that we could. I mean, I remember one job we did where we underbid, or the lady asked us to like dig up a garden bed. It wasn't even kind of in our core job descriptions. And we were like, yeah, we can do that. And it took us like 3 days, and we completely messed up the bid. And I think I pulled a hernia that job. There was another job where U.S. Airways wanted us to clean out one of their big warehouses, and they had these big commercial contractors bidding on it, and we ended up winning the bid and just figuring it out. So in the early days, I'm a big proponent of get the account, figure out how to make it happen and just get it done. Because a lot of entrepreneurship in the early days is just kind of that get her done mentality and that get her done mindset. Now, as you grow, you also have to be mindful of your reputation, and you're right, you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and so you have to kind of find that delicate balance. But I think there's some entrepreneurial intuition that you can have, and if something makes you a little bit uncomfortable, I think that's okay. You're stretching your comfort zone. If it's something like she needed us to be in, I don't know, New Zealand the following week, we'd just been like, we can't, or it's not realistic. So I think it's just kind of finding that delicate balance, but facing down fear is one of the most important pieces of being an entrepreneur. That's why we took this leap of faith to embark on this journey. So don't let that prevent you from taking advantage of maybe bigger opportunities that you're comfortable with at this moment. I saw another hand in the back. Yes.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, there's usually 3 reasons that somebody will franchise their business from an expansion standpoint. And by the way, we had a very glamorized vision of what franchising was going to be. We thought, hey, Kay, okay, we're working so hard in this day-to-day business. If we just franchise it, it'll become passive income. We'll collect royalty checks, and we won't have to worry about all the heavy lifting and hard work. It was completely beyond the opposite of that. It was, a very steep learning curve. It's a very get-rich-slow process. You have to have 100+ franchises before you're really, or maybe at least 50 before you're really at critical mass where the royalty stream is meaningful. Franchise owners in many cases are people, who you can't fire. In many cases, you might should have hired them in the early days, but you had no choice because you needed the franchise fee to collect to keep the lights on. You got to provide a lot of support to your franchise owners. So there are some challenges with it that we didn't really kind of have our eyes wide open to coming into it. But the 3 reasons that people will typically franchise their model are, number 1, they want to expand quickly. It's an expansion strategy, because you can expand into other markets, the brand, more quickly than if you were to go up and open up, individual stores yourself. Number 2, access to capital. It's somewhat of a capitalization strategy because somebody's paying you a small, $25,000 to $50,000 franchise fee up front to go open that location. You're providing them some support, coaching, and training for them to do that, but you're not having to go spend the $100,000 to go open up that office. And number 3, kind of a shortage of or lack of access to manpower. It's not like we had a bunch of managers that were knocking down our door to want to go open up College Hunks operations in all these different cities. And so we were missing all 3 of those areas, and so that was kind of the most logical path for us to grow our brand, and it's worked out very well at this point. We did work with a consulting company. The name of it was called iFranchise Group. They're out of Chicago. We were happy with it. I mean, we could have figured some of the stuff out on our own, but they kind of helped us sort of get from A to Z of franchising more quickly than we probably could have on our own.
Great. Any other
saw one
questions?
right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the question is kind of about how do we keep our spirit of our company and our values and culture vibrant, throughout the franchises as well. We have a slogan that you guys can probably tell I'm big on mottos and slogans. We have a slogan we use, it's not what's on the walls, it's what's in the halls. So we really try to make the core values something that's as top of mind every single day. We give a core value award at our annual franchise conference. We spotlight it on our internal kind of communication board. When people are living the core values, we share them out on the public social media sphere, and we make it a really intentional part of training. I give the first chapter, if you will, the first 3 hours of orientation on our week-long franchise training, and it's not about loading a truck or getting a customer. It's about the history, the vision, and the values, which ultimately define the culture, and then making sure that the franchise owners understand that is part of our magic sauce because, we're not selling a product. That is part of our secret sauce that they've got to be able to replicate if they want to be successful. So it's being repetitive and reinforcing and recognizing and celebrating, and then also getting the folks that don't align with those core values, calling it out, getting them out of the organization if it's chronic, and not allowing things that are contrary to that vibrancy to manifest and grow. Probably have time for one more question. Yes? So I studied economics at college. I went to a liberal arts college, so that was the closest thing to a business degree for me. Very theoretical stuff, but I think it helped my brain, it helped my work ethic, it helped figuring out how to navigate spreadsheets. And then my business partner was a management and marketing major, which obviously has a lot of relevance to this. But I'll be honest, I didn't know what the word entrepreneur meant until we started our business. People were like, oh, so you're an entrepreneur. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's what that word means. But I became a big student of entrepreneurship after we started the business because I had something that I was really passionate about learning and wanting to apply everything I learned to the business that I was growing. Which is a good segue to wrap up. So Omar and I co-authored a book called Effortless Entrepreneur, which we all know there's nothing effortless about it, but when you're in the zone, when you're in the flow, sometimes it can feel or appear effortless when you see the athletes or the artists that are really mastering their craft. So we're going to be offering this book for purchase outside after my talk during the break, but I happen to have one copy here as well that I'm going to be giving away right now. So who would like it? Anybody can have it.
Come and get it.
Anybody
is what he's
at all.
saying. Take the opportunity and get the book.
Good job. Good
Well
job.
done. Well done.
That was close.
Thank you
That was,
so
that was,
much.
that was almost a
Nick.
collapse. So real quick, what did you guys notice that she and the other two individuals that came close did that everybody was sort of somewhat hesitant to do? Took action. She went and got it. When I held that up, everybody was like, "Yeah, I'd like a book." But everybody, when I kind of kept going, people were like looking around. Does he want me to run grab it? Does he want me to run take it? So I want to kind of leave you guys with this thought: in order to have the things that other people don't, you have to be willing to do the things that other people won't. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Nick.